Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide on Charlton and Big C Sports. Today is a beautiful July the 6th, 2016, and we're just after Independence Day. This is the $1 Million Show, and I want to thank all of our listeners from Latin America. So bienvenidos to you. I'm learning more Spanish, Big C. Of course, we have London, England, the great Berlin, Germany, and of course Canada, as well as the great United States of America. I also want to start thanking some of our followers in Russia. About 2% of our audience comes from Russia, and I was talking to a guy over here at Russian American Media in Sacramento, so hopefully we'll pick up a big block of Russian as well that follows Charlton and Big C Sports, Big C. But I know you're calling in from the East Coast, as you always do. How are things going down Southeast, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I'm still working off that 4th of July food high. I've been lackadaisical. It's almost like drugs. I ate so much meat. And like I said, I put it down. I gained 7 to 8 pounds. Like you said, I want to thank the listeners out there worldwide. We appreciate you following the show. You are what makes us. You're what inspires us. We come to you daily to give you some insight, not just scores. Anybody can read a ticker and tell you it was 4-3, 7-5.
Yeah.
We want to tell you how it got there, how the game evolved to that point, Charlton. This is what we do for our listeners.
Yeah.
Because we understand, know, and have been involved in sports. That gives us a little bit of an edge over most people that you see on television talking about the games, Charlton.
Yeah, I remember there's so many things that happened in my history of learning and reading about the sports business. I started reading the newspaper all the time when I was a little boy, and I loved reading about the sports. I loved reading about the business, and ironically, I went to school to study business and communications, and I understood how it makes the world go around. Wall Street makes the world go around, and sports connects the whole world. And speaking of connecting the whole world, this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you, because you can only get it there brand new. Now, Big C, I know in the world of sports, we've had so much happening. I can't wait until football season starts. I know we have the All-Star game coming up, and that's going to be out here in the great state of California, down in San Diego, and that's going to be next Tuesday. But also we have the Olympics. People are getting ready for that, Big C. We just finished with the NBA championships. But one of the things that I know that kind of dear in your heart is the boxing world. I know we just talked about the great Muhammad Ali over the past month, celebrating his passing and his legacy. But the world of MMA, Big C, Fox has paid a lot of money, Fox Sports, in order to cover the MMA. I think ESPN kind of dropped the ball on that. But what's your thought on the world of MMA and UFC? Can that actually overtake boxing in popularity, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, it actually has over the past half decade. The MMA, Charlton, is a worldwide event, and they put on these mega events. So, if people go back and think about the WWE, WWF, wrestling, how often they put on events. That's where the MMA is, Charlton. They are putting on events all the time, and these are world-class events, and they're action-packed. That's what boxing was 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
It was action-packed. Now you go to a boxing match, it's like going to sleepy home. You can bring a pillow and a sleeping bag, because that's what you get in most of these boxing events.
Yeah.
But the MMA, is a modern-day gladiator, Charlton. When you think of the only thing that's not involved in the MMA, I believe, is fighting.
And that might happen in a whole...
You can kick a man, you can elbow a man, you can punch a man, you can basically headbutt him to a degree.
Yeah.
But, there's really no defense for this gladiator sport.
Yeah, and
the excitement level of it is just so high that you see these grown men pounding, and even the women, Charlton, in the sport.
Yeah.
You have superstars. But this game has been around a lot longer than what America realizes, Charlton. It's been out there. And, I go back to a fighter named Anderson Silva.
Oh, yeah.
Who won some 47 fights before he ever lost. And he lost consecutive fights, Charlton, 2 years ago. But in those fights, he broke his leg.
Yeah.
He broke his leg, lost his title, came back to, try to regain the title.
Yeah.
Broke his leg again and retired.
Yeah.
But he was the Muhammad Ali of the MMA, Charlton.
Yeah.
He was a light heavyweight champion. but he was just so dominant in his sport with his speed and his tenacity that you think about it, going 47 fights in any sport, or any, winning 47 games consecutively and not losing. This man, Charlton, dominated the industry.
Yeah. I think what you're thinking about, Big C, when we talk about this whole world, I think about Don King and how Don King promoted the fight game like no one else, Big C. Of course, he had the great Muhammad Ali and also his latest Mike Tyson, and they were obviously two of the best fighters to ever get into the ring.
Bob Arum in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And Bob Arum and
another great
Don
one.
King were basically like rivals, and Bob Arum is still in the game.
Yeah.
You've had guys come along lately like Oscar De La Hoya, who went from the ring to the promotional part, with the Hoya Promotions. And even Sugar Ray Leonard, Charlton, has dabbled into the promotional end. Matter of fact, Big Daddy Riddick Bowe, when he turned champion, he was working out of Sugar Ray Leonard's camp. And his first professional fight, Sugar Ray Leonard sponsored it. Matter of fact, Ray and I were sitting side by side at ringside for Big Daddy's first professional fight.
Yeah.
And he eventually became a world heavyweight champion. But, when you look at the boxing game, Charlton, and you go with the history of the boxing game, and people know that it's been dominated by African-Americans over the decades. The first African-American heavyweight champion was Jack Johnson back in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
But it took him 7 years, Charlton, of pursuing the title to get a title shot because no one was fighting because of Jim Crow. No one wanted to take the chance of losing to a black man, so he could never get a title defense. And when he finally got the title defense, Charlton, he held it for a decade.
And see, when you think about that, Big C, and again, we come to you worldwide, so whether it's in Berlin or whether it's in Russia, we even have people that tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports from Australia, so thank you for doing that. But boxing's worldwide. It's a ubiquitous sport, and people box. I remember when I was a young boy, we used to just box in the backyard with boxing gloves, and because we could see Muhammad Ali fight on ABC Sports back in the day. Now you have to pay $100 or at least $50 to watch guys fight that are nowhere as good as Muhammad Ali was, Big C. But that whole thing that's taken off, I think that the MMA up here in Sacramento, they had the West Coast Championship fighting, and I was able to cover that. I actually did a broadcast of that fight, and they had about 12 good fighters. 3 to maybe 4 of those fights were very, very solid fights. Other guys were kind of overmatched. And the thing I like about that is it's harder than you think. Now, Big C, I even thought about getting in the ring with some of these MMA guys until I saw some of them get punched in the head, and there's a golf ball size knot on their head. They put the ice pack on it, Big C, and that changed my mind, Big C. So did I make the right decision not getting into the sport?
I think if you had not made that decision, you and I would not be having this conversation.
Yeah.
You probably have a little blurred speech going on, these little slurs there on your jaw. These guys are real gladiators.
Oh, yeah.
We did a show earlier back in the summer, and Shane Sutherland, former light heavyweight MMA champ, when I was down in Texas.
Yeah.
We were sitting in the same restaurant, tables across from each other, and, having a nice conversation with him. But these guys are rock hard and solid, Charlton. You talk about the ultimate trainer.
Yeah.
We look at other sports, we talk about basketball and football, the regiment that these players have to go through to get ready for the season. And every fighter, Charlton, has to go through this daily, weekly. They don't have a chance to have an off season. Their off season is between fights, Charlton, so they always have to stay in peak condition. They can't go out and put on 25 pounds and say, okay, I'm going to have a fight in 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
And be prepared.
Yeah.
So when you look at the following they had, this goes back to the old boxing days, Charlton, of the 40s and 50s, when you had, the Brown Mountain, Joe Louis.
Oh, yeah.
Who dominated the sport, who fought Max Felton a couple times.
Yeah.
You look at a Jersey Joe Wilcox who came along and was an older champion, Ezra Charles, who fought in the heavyweight arena. You think about even the great Rocky Marciano, who went 49-0.
Oh, yeah.
As a heavyweight champ. And then you moved into the newer era where you had a Sonny Liston and a young Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay originally, Joe Frazier, Joe Ellis. These guys who came along and dominated. You had a Ken Norton come in and this brute of a monster called George Foreman.
Oh, yeah. The George Foreman grill.
Holmes comes along, Johnson, but
Yep.
Mike Tyson came in and dominated the industry. You had a Michael Spinks for a couple years.
Yeah.
You had Evander Holyfield. But when you look at these people, Charlton, they left legacies.
Yeah.
and they all represented the sport well. You know, other than Mike Tyson getting into some trouble, you didn't see these guys on the police blotter. They were what African Americans looked up to, Charlton. You know, I can remember as a kid, and my great-grandfather, you know, because they used to have Friday night fights.
Yeah.
And he and his buddies would sit around the radio because you didn't have the TV channels to pick it up. But on the Friday night fights, they would sit there and leaning forward in their chairs.
That was their entertainment.
Like they could see what was going on.
Yeah.
But they were so inspired by the African-American fighters of the day back in the 50s and the 60s. They were their role models. They looked up to them because these people went out and took on a challenge against a society that really didn't like them as people, but they can dominate it, Charles.
Well, speaking of dominating, Big C, this segment is sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealers, home of the ultimate driving machine. Go down and test drive the 1 Series all the way up to the super powerful 600 horsepower M7, and when you're test driving it, let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, speaking about dominating, when we talk about football and basketball, we get into politics. And sometimes you good old boys even like to talk about religion down south, but in the UFC 200 on Saturday.
You're talking about the NCAA football team, Charlton.
Oh, of course.
You know, we're going to give them some religion, some old-time religion. And then we're going to take them out behind the woodshed and open up a can or something, you know, start with a
well,
I don't know if it's a washing machine or whatever, but, you know, it's going to be a clean sweep, Charles.
Well, I think you might want to read the headlines. They hired back Lynn Swan after the athletic director, so he's getting those boys whipped up in good shape, and they're all riding a horse, Big C, so they're getting ready for the Alabama boys. But
they don't need to wait to walk off the field, Charles, and that's what the horse is
maybe that's what the horse is for. That's funny, Big C. But thinking of UFC 200 on Saturday night, Daniel Cormier, who's 17-1, and John Bones Jones, who's also 22-1. This is a light heavyweight championship. Now, you and I talk about boxing and MMA, and when I cover the fights here in Sacramento, there's so much talent in Northern California and the Bay Area. And these guys just want to get into the UFC. I remember Diaz, when he beat Conor McGregor, he's actually out of Stockton, just out here outside of the Bay Area. And so there's a lot of fighters. And unlike Ali and Frazier and Norton, the guys you talked about, Larry Holmes and Holyfield, you can be a good MMA guy and you can make the money because it doesn't take the same kind of skill that a boxer has. This is more like this barroom fighting. I remember you talked about a guy named Kimbo Slice, the late Kimbo Slice, that used to knock guys out in their backyards, Big C. And so a lot of guys, they've taken that to heart. And because Fox paid so much money to carry it on TV as pay-per-view now, they can actually make decent money, Big C. But is that a good or bad thing? They fought it in New York until they realized how much money they were giving up, Big C.
Well, Charlton, everything basically becomes economic industrial. And so if it's going to be broadcast, you have to get the ROI, the return on investment. And that's what any business and corporation is looking to do. So if they're going to pay the fighters, just like in basketball, baseball, and football, and hockey, you have to find a way to increase revenue. And increased revenue is having people pay. You know, you look at the events that go on in Vegas, and they hold them on a regular basis. When you think about, you know, these guys are playing to packed houses in Vegas. 15 to 20,000 people, depending on the arena that's being utilized down there. And it's standing room only. So that's how popular it is, Charlton. Regardless of the size of the venue, they're selling it out because the fan knows that they get a return on their investment also, Charlton. They're not going there watching guys dance around a ring for 2.5 out of the 3
It's action. It's straight action.
It's action from the opening bell, Charlton. And those 3 5-minute rounds, that's some real tussling and grappling going on, Charlton. And you have to be in peak physical and mental condition to withstand the onslaught of your opponent.
Well, that's definitely true. And speaking of the onslaught of the opponent, I know that you talk about the Alabama and USC game. USC's coach Clay Helton.
we bring those games, Charlton. We bring those in. It's called preseason. You don't bring in.
Oh, that's what it's called.
You can lose. So you bring in somebody that, hey, let's keep it respectable. Let's not try to beat them by more than 28.
Well, I remember the last time Paul Bear Bryant, he was drinking all that moonshine that you good old boys, you guys boil up down south, and he called John K. McKay, and decided to schedule USC, and that's when Sam Bam Cunningham went down there. They run over Alabama, beat them by 3 touchdowns, and that's when your good old boy, they have a statue of Paul Bear Bryant. He said, I got to get me some of those. And we thought he was talking about moonshine, but he meant black athletes, and now that's predominantly what Alabama has, is a lot of black athletes. So they've caught up to USC as far as athletically, but USC returns 16 returning starters on that football team. Should be a great game no matter who wins. But I think Lynn Swann is very smart. He said, no SEC officials, Big C. So you guys can't bring the officials to Texas for that good old boy game, Big C. But something.
Well, I think the ones down the Southwest times are pretty close to being in the South.
Okay.
Whether it's from Alabama or Texas, they gotta be fair. Well, they gotta give SC the ball and allow them to kick it off.
Well,
that's not a problem.
Who's the great announcer? One of the greatest announcers, called so many Rose Bowl games. Whoa, Nelly, that's Keith Jackson, right?
I was going to say Mr. Keith Jackson.
Mr. Keith Jackson.
The voice of college football, Charlton. When Keith Jackson did a game, his voice just resonated.
Yeah.
You appreciated listening to him. He had so many iconic sayings that, the big eaters.
Yeah.
Whoa, Nelly. The fat guy. I mean, he came up with such coin phrases.
Yeah.
And they worked with him during his announcing. And you spoke about Bob Greasy earlier. They were a great tandem, Charlton, for about 12 years.
Yeah.
Keith Jackson and Bob Greasy. Later on, he worked with Dan Fouts.
Yeah.
But this man was heritage when it came to college football. And, his last couple of years, and I talked with Keith and got to meet him. He lived up in northern Washington, Charlton.
Yeah.
He said that his game was slipping. And he wanted to get out of the game, Charlton, while he could still be remembered as a good announcer.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be remembered as a guy that was hanging on, trying to get in that last broadcast. And we've seen a lot of guys over the years do.
Yeah.
But he respected the game so much that he did not want to embarrass himself during the game, Charlton. Much respect for Mr. Keith Jackson, the greatest college football announcer of all time.
Well, I definitely think he's amazing. We also have the great Brent Musburger, and he does a great job. Tom Hammond does a great job doing Notre Dame football. I think Gus Johnson is amazing. There's so many good talents out there on the college football scene, and I'm really looking forward to it kicking off again this season, Big C. But just one more thing about this UFC fight on Fight 200 on Saturday. If you look at John Bones Jones, he's an American mixed martial artist. He's a UFC light heavyweight champion, and he's considered, Big C, the best mixed martial artist in the world. And he won the first fight by unanimous decision over Daniel Cormier, who's also a former Olympic wrestler, and he's a light heavyweight champion, UFC champion. Now, we talked about Dana White. He's the one that everyone has to get along with Dana White in order to make this money happen. I think as they realize more and more people will get into MMA that have a strong background, that have already been successful, and they're going to have another promoter that will come in and challenge for who's going to have the best fighters come through. I think like Arum and also Don King did, Big C. But it's a great thing for the fighters. I've met so many great fighters up here in Sacramento. A lot of these guys work 2 and 3 jobs. They're looking for a way to get their head kicked in, Big C, just so they can make $1 million. So when it comes to getting your head kicked in to make a few $1 million, I think I'm up for that, Big C. In fact, I'm getting in shape with Lynn Swann and the UFC Trojans. Are you getting in shape too, Big C, for the UFC fight coming up?
well, Charlton, I'll just keep buying lottery tickets.
Yeah.
I'll get kicked in the pocket and the rear end. If somebody's going to jump on me, I don't know if I can call 911.
Yeah.
But when you think about Dana White, Charles, about 2.5, 3 months ago, there was a rumor mill going around that he had been offered upwards of $4 billion
wow.
for the MMA.
Wow.
Someone to take it over.
I'll take it.
That's the popularity of this sport where it's going. Now, the MMA is valued at about $2 billion, Charles, as a corporation. But there was rumors that he was offered some $4 billion for his organization.
Wow.
So that, there's the popularity and there's the money in the sport. And then you talk about them just signing this huge television contract with Fox.
Yeah.
So this is no small potatoes when you look at the MMA from where it came from to where it is, being one of the elitist sports now in America as well as the world.
Well, I want to let Dana White know that Charlton and Big C Sports also come into iHeartRadio worldwide. iHeartRadio covers about 250 million listeners per week, so I thank them for accepting our show and bringing us on to that program. That will be happening soon. And also, Big C, I thank you again for all the tutelage that I've learned from you in your 40-plus years in the business. And speaking of business, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealer, home of the all-new F-150. They build it for a tough. And when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And also BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, it's fast, and secure. And when it comes to promotions, contact Cynthia Evans of CYNN Entertainment. When it comes to promotions, she's the best in Northern California. Let her know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, I know we talk so much about the sports business, and you're down south and calling in from the East Coast. You cover all the sports you've been over the years. Very, very knowledgeable. But I want to ask you this thing because the NFL, they're still having some issues. John Elway, who, when he was drafted out of Stanford, he did not want to play for the first team that drafted him. I think that was the Baltimore Colts. Were they Baltimore at the time when they drafted him, Big C? And he went to Indianapolis Colts. He said no.
Ray Cush was a head coach, former head coach at Arizona State.
Yeah.
And the Ursay family still owned the team at the time, but he refused to play. Pete Rozelle was the commissioner.
Yeah.
He refused to play. This was 1983, Charlton.
Yeah.
He said that he would go play professional baseball, and George Steinbrenner actually signed him to a contract because in college at Stanford, he was a third baseman for the Stanford Cardinals as well as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So he was actually in the Yankees farm system and forced to trade. Now, the trade that was made was for a draft pick the following year, first-round draft pick, but also for an all-pro guard named Chris Hinton, who was in his third year out of Northwestern University, one of the most highly academic schools in the country.
Yeah.
But, you know, the trade worked out for both teams, but John Elway at that point set a precedence in the NFL, and it was actually followed 20 years later, Charlton, by Eli Manning. In 2003, when the New York not the New York Giants, but the San Diego Chargers.
Yeah, the Chargers.
Him.
Yeah.
Number 1 overall. They had to swap draft picks for Phillip Rivers because Eli Manning and the Manning family refused to play in San Diego.
Well, you know, what's crazy about that, Big C, is when I look back at the Super Bowl, Von Miller, you know, we had so many no-name quarterbacks, even Brock Osweiler, who was picked up by the Houston Texans. They gave him $72 million, and he was sitting on the bench. He couldn't even beat out Peyton Manning, who was so banged up he had to retire, Big C. And when I look at Brock Osweiler, how he easily got $72 million, but the Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl 50, they're playing around with Von Miller as if he's expendable, which I think is a dumb thing. Now, I know that Elway has been given the reins up there in Denver, and I know it's a mile-high city for a reason, so maybe Elway needs to start looking at the paper and realizing who helped them win the Super Bowl. It wasn't Peyton Manning. It was Von Miller, Big C.
He was looking at the paper or
rolling the paper or something. But Elway...
John Elway, I think, went to the latter side. That maybe some substance had him thinking otherwise. Now, I think about the last great pass rusher that a team let get away, and that was Elvis Dumervil, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Over a fax, it was 2 minutes late.
2 minutes late.
He ends up with the Baltimore Ravens and continued his all-pro career. Now, he was one of the top sackers in the NFL and still is. Now, what's going to happen if that same thing happens in Denver and you toy around with Von Miller? Yes, a player would love to spend his entire career with a team that drafted.
Oh, yeah.
But we've all seen in the past couple of weeks, especially with the free agency in the NFL and even in the NBA, this is about money.
Yeah.
This is about getting what you can while you can.
Yeah.
Now, if Von Miller goes in and has to play under that franchise tag for 1 year, he will not be in Denver the following year because the free agent
go to Oakland.
How good Von Miller
go west, young man.
Denver Bronco.
Go west, young man, because the Raiders are trying to build something that to compete for the AFC West. But Big C,
Charlton, could you imagine him and Khalil Mack?
Oh my goodness! I think he should realize it. I think Jack Del Rio should make a phone call, get on a plane, and get into Denver. And John Elway's wanting to screw around because he thinks he can, but that's a dumb decision. You got a team leader and a Super Bowl MVP, and you're treating him like he was at North Dakota State. I hope Von Miller gets out of Denver and goes to the Raiders. Go with a team that really wants you to play. Big C, this is for all the players that think they want to play in the NFL, and they think they're going to lift enough weights and they're going to take enough HGH or whatever they're going to take. But look at what happened to the very best defender on your team. He's being treated like a yeoman. He's being treated like a second-class citizen. They're monkeying around with this guy that's been the leader for that team the last 3 years. He's out of Texas A&M. He was an All-American there. But why mess around with this guy when you know he's the reason you won the Super Bowl, Big C? I think that's disrespectful. I think Elway's trying to have an ego thing, even though they called him today. Elway doesn't give a crap about Von Miller. He's caring about the money. But if you don't keep the guy that helped you win the Super Bowl, then shame on you. I hope he goes west, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, when you think about it, he was the number 4 overall draft pick when he came out of A&M. Okay? Now, when you look at some of these quarterbacks, the last two was drafted this year, Goff and Wentz.
Yeah.
Both of those guys had a contract in a week. Even though you know what the rookie salary.
They're not even going to play. Now they're backtracking on them, Big C. You were right about that the whole time.
Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
He started 2 games. Who won
Overrated.
2 games
Overrated, Andrew Luck.
Von Miller has been to how many Super Bowls since he's been in the NFL? 3?
Yeah.
I mean, 2?
2 of them.
He's been to 2 Super Bowls.
Yep.
Since he's been in the NFL. So there's a huge reason for the Broncos getting to the Super Bowl since they've drafted this young man, Charlton. So you have to look at players that are productive. And teams are playing players on potential.
Yeah, on potential.
This guy has lived up to his potential and exceeded it.
Yeah.
But that's not worth any money.
Well,
but if you're an Anglo quarterback in the NFL, Charlton, well, eventually he will pan out. You know, you look at a Matt Ryan down in Atlanta, who's never won a playoff game. You look at a Matthew Stafford in Detroit, who's won 1 playoff game. You look at these players who haven't given you anything, Charlton, over the years.
You're right.
But you look at a Russell Wilson, been to 2 Super Bowls. A Cam Newton, who's been to a Super Bowl. You know, these guys don't get the money that these other quarterbacks. Look at the money Phillip Rivers is getting.
Yeah.
He's had a great career.
It's for what, though?
But he's never gotten to the Super Bowl. Mark Sanchez has been as far as Phillip Rivers in his short career on more occasions. But he's become a journeyman because he's a Latino quarterback, Charlton.
Well, see, I know.
He reminds me of the great Jim Plunkett, who was the number 1 overall draft pick out of Stanford.
Same school that Elway went to.
Went to the Boston Patriots at that time.
Yeah.
A team that had nothing. Got beat up for 4 or 5 years. They sent him away. He ends up in San Francisco. Sits on the bench in San Francisco for a couple of years. Monty Clark was the head coach during that time. Backed up Steve DeBerg.
Yeah.
Okay? Ended up across the bay going to Oakland under a Latino coach named Tom Flores.
Tom Flores.
Went to 2 Super Bowls, 1980, 1983. Won both of them, Charlton. And is still not in the NFL Hall of Fame. Why? A Latino quarterback who won 2 Super Bowls cannot get to the NFL Hall of Fame. Look at the number of Anglo quarterbacks, Charlton, who won 1 Super Bowl and didn't win any, and that are in the NFL Hall of Fame. Look at Joe Theismann. He's in the Hall of Fame. Won 1 Super Bowl. Yeah. Okay, Joe Namath won 1 Super Bowl. You know, Jim Plunkett won 2.
Yeah.
And can't get it.
Well,
what's wrong with this?
I've always said that color doesn't matter. I know Tim Weiss wrote a book called, White Skin Privilege, but I think it carries over into all factors of American business, Big C. I want to bring this up too, because Peyton Manning, who rode off in the championship game, he was only 13 of 23 for 141 yards and an interception in the Super Bowl. Von Miller caused 2 fumbles on Cam Newton, and he's still without a contract. That's just a dumb thing. I hope that Von Miller will think about going west, go out and play for the Raiders, because they're in position, along with Kansas City, to compete for the AFC West. In Denver, you mess around with the chemistry, just like in a relationship, you can lose what you have. And speaking of chemistry, this final segment is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed $100,000 life insurance, no medical questions asked. Also by Goosehead Property and Casualty Insurance, we're the leaders when it comes to property and casualty. We beat about 98% of the people when it comes to a quote. Also, I'm a broker with One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in final expense. And you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports. Big C, the final thing I want to bring up, because there's all of this talk about contracts. We talked about over the years how players are going to go for the money. And I think people are mad when you look at the NBA, how Durant's going to Golden State, and they're saying that he betrayed Oklahoma City, that left the whole state of Washington to go to Oklahoma, Big C. But when athletes want to leave, take the money. And if this is not prime reason with Von Miller, the NFL Super Bowl MVP, a lot like Doug Williams when he played for the Washington Redskins, threw for 5 touchdown passes, never started another game in the NFL. Von Miller's being treated the same way. They're giving guys that sat the bench have already signed $72 million. If he's not the highest paid defensive player, I know everyone loves J.J. Watt and he's great, but how many Super Bowls has J.J. Watt been to in the last 3 years, Big C?
There has not been any. I mean, when you look at the highest paid defensive player in the NFL, he plays in Kansas City, Ken Houston, outside linebacker, number 50. But, you know, there was a song out, these girls ain't loyal.
Yeah.
They can change that to owners ain't loyal.
No,
owners in professional sport not loyal to any player, Charlton. Let's keep it realistic.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan had to go eventually. Okay, Magic Johnson had to go eventually.
Yeah.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you go up and down the list. Jerry West, Oscar Robertson. All these players eventually had to go. The great Bill Russell.
Yeah.
So when you talk about loyalty, you are as loyal as getting your paycheck. But when it's time to go, if you look up and down, you know, you look at the trade with Derrick Rose from Chicago, #1 overall draft pick about a decade ago by the Chicago Bulls, former MVP. He had to go. The great Shaquille O'Neal was the most dominant player in the NBA. The Orlando Magic's wouldn't pay him, Charlton.
Yeah.
He met with Jerry West one evening, and Orlando never asked Shaq what he wanted. Jerry West asked Shaq what he wanted. Orlando Mourning was the highest paid player in the NBA at the time.
Yeah.
But who was the most dominant? That was Shaq.
Yeah.
So Jerry West asked him what he wanted. He said, I just want to make more than Alonzo.
Yeah.
He said, let me get back to you. The next day, he traded Vlade Divac, got rid of a couple other contracts. Shaq became a Laker.
And see,
they call Shaq a traitor, Johnson. They called him a traitor.
Yeah.
How can he be a traitor when he's trying to optimize his income over his short, non-guaranteed career?
Well, no one calls a baseball player a traitor when they opt to go, like Greinke went from the Dodgers to the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's not a traitor, but I think there's a color line issue there, and that's what's hurting Durant. Durant should be able to go where he wants. They actually burned his jersey in Oklahoma City. What's this thing with burning jerseys? Now, these aren't black Americans burning jerseys. These are Caucasian people who buy tickets that are burning the jerseys of these black players.
It's part of the history.
Something sinister, yeah.
When you think about it, it has never been black people going out, burning down white houses, burning down white businesses. It's always been Anglo-American, Charlton, going after the African-Americans. And we talked about them burning down the African-American stock market back in 1921.
Also Oklahoma.
Burned down the white stock market.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at it throughout history, they've gone in, burned down communities, homes, destroyed families, businesses. This has become Anglo-American. And so who are they hurting by going burning a jersey? They paid for it.
Yeah.
They paid the owner. They paid the NBA. And everybody made money off of their foolishness. Now all of a sudden they're going to burn it because they feel they're going to hurt Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is going to go on and be successful wherever he's playing his NBA career.
Yeah, and I think
he did a LeBron James as well as many other professional players over the decades. I want to win a championship. I'm rich, whether I play another game or not, basketball, baseball, football, hockey. I want a championship ring to add to my legacy. Well, that's what players want.
I think you're right, Big C, and I credit you also because you were saying halfway through the season that Durant and Westbrook would not both be in Oklahoma City when 99% of the pundits out there were saying, oh, he's going to sign with OKC for one more season. But I think you're most prescient, Big C, again, he left Oklahoma City, which you predicted he would because they really didn't get along. It's hard to have two roosters in a hen house, Big C. But the final thing I want to end up with, you know, and I'm congratulating you too because I'm looking at this ESPN, the body edition, the body issue, and I'm wondering, I look through all the pages, I don't see any images of myself, but did I not see a picture of the Mystic in the body issue of Sports Illustrated, Big C, or am I wrong about that, Big C?
Well, you know, Butch Wolf was trying to emulate me, Charlton.
Okay.
Big body man looking real sexy. Now, you got to be proud of what you did, Charlton. And the thing to do with Vince did, I gave him all the credit in the world.
Oh, yeah.
When you talk about big sexy, you don't have any big sexy than Wolf.
Well, I think, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and not everybody likes someone who's so skinny that it looks like a bone. Sometimes you give a dog a bone, and it says, where's the meat? And I remember that commercial back in the day, there was a lady in some hamburger commercial. Yeah, she said, where's the beef? You know, so when I look at Vince Wilfork and a lot of you beefy football players, you know, don't be ashamed of your big size, and, you know, no matter what it is, if you can keep yourself in shape, do the best you can to do that for your health. But, Big C, I want to bring up the last thing. I know we have the All-Star game coming up. We have Serena Williams and Venus Williams, and they're always doing their thing. in the world of tennis. But I can't leave this without saying the Muhammad Ali, the Ali Center received $500 million to help inner city kids with academics and education. It wasn't about becoming the next boxer. And I want to always make this a mantra of our show. For all of you boys, young boys, especially inner city kids out there trying to get your Madden 2016 and you're trying to play these fantasy football leagues, learn to invest in the stock market. The stock market is an equalizer. You don't have to run the 40 and 4.5. You don't have to be 6'5", 300 pounds. Spend some time understanding the stock market. I know Phil Knight's going to sell you the next $200 pair of Nike shoes, but you can also start learning about trading, even if you just do it an hour a week, Big C. That can change your life, even if it takes a whole year. But I hope most kids in the inner city can do what Jim Brown and you talked about. Start learning more about your academics and your education and your finances, Big C. In the last minute, I'll give it over to you, Big C.
Well, Charlton, I look at what you say about the stock market. Every time someone buys a pair of Nike shoes, they're increasing the stock value of Nike.
Yeah.
Now, there's guys who have 60, 70, 80, couple hundred pairs of shoes in their closet. Now, if they went out and bought stock with those shoes, what would that stock be worth? Even if they only bought penny stock, Charlton.
Yeah.
And if they held on to the penny stock, as long as they hold on to those shoes, it's going to get a return on the investment. Once you buy those shoes, they depreciate. It's learning what world and social economics is, Charlton.
Yeah.
What will benefit you down the road? You can have all the Nikes, all the Adidas, all the Converse, all the Puma shoes that you want, Under Armour. But none of those shoes pay you. If you take that money as a young man, regardless of race, take that money as a young man, learn how to invest. It's so easy to learn how to make money and build your future. Buy an education with the money that you come in.
Yeah.
You're not going to get an education with a pair of sneakers. But you can take that and build your 401k, your nest egg for retirement, and 20 years down the road, you could be at the point, Charlton, where you're not working because you don't have to.
Well, I think you're right about that, Big C. There's a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness, and I know Will Smith played the guy in the movie. It's about a man who went from homelessness to being a multimillionaire, not through athletics, but through the stock market. And I also want to tell everyone, take the time to do that. Also, I want to congratulate Charlton and Big C Sports for coming onto the family of iHeartRadio worldwide, about 250 million listeners per week. And I thank all of our fans who followed us from Salem Media. Big C, I appreciate you so much. And all of you fans out there tweeting at Charlton and Big C Sports, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we wish you a super fantastic day.